Welcome to Enlightened Business Radio.
It's about making money, contributing to the world, and creating more freedom, meaning, and love in your life.
The show starts now.
Hello, everybody. Max Simon here, Mr. Jeffery Van Dyke. Hello, Mr. Van Dyke.
Hello. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Enlightened Business Radio. If you are new here, first I want to invite you to go over to enlightenedbusinessradio.com, enter your name and email address, not only because that's where this very interesting and fantastic dialogue is taking place, where you can share your comments and feedback and ask your own questions, but also because that's where we can tell you about future shows that are coming up. So head on over to enlightenedbusinessradio.com and make sure you are subscribed to be a part of that. Now, this show is all about addressing the questions that you're afraid to ask, but you're dying to know. What are some of those questions, Mr. Van Dyke?
Well, a biggie that we'll be addressing today is this question of, gosh, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something different or more or bigger. And that calling won't go away, and it just keeps amping up. But I seem to not be paying attention, or I'm trying to push it away, or I just don't know how to address it. So I feel really stuck in between these two things.
Or I'm saying that I don't know what it is, so I'm going to keep doing the same thing I've always been doing. Or I'm going to pretend that it's not going to require me to stretch and grow, so I'll just kind of keep playing safe. These are the kind of things. And so, how did this come about? Well, we ask you to submit your questions, and then we read between the lines. We look at what you're saying, and then we look at what you're really attempting to say. So, we got questions like, well, how do I know if this is a viable market?
or how do I know this is the right thing that I'm being called to do?
Yeah. Or what if I have this whole other thing that I'm already doing? Should I just keep doing that? You're asking those questions, which are very valid questions, very reasonable questions. But what you're really asking underneath all of that is, holy crap, there's something new I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm terrified. And what do I do about that?
Right. And underneath that are questions like, can I make any money? Will my whole business fall apart? Will my family and friends support me? If I get really big, then will I feel all alone at the top? Can I trust myself to do well and not let my ego run amok and cause all sorts of havoc if I really say yes to this thing?
Yeah. And so if you're here right now listening, first, welcome. Again, we do these shows live and love for you to join us. If you're not listening live, we hope that means it's because you've either got to it from bigvisionbusiness.com or you found us on iTunes, which we now are posting these into the podcast section under Enlightened Business Radio. If you did find us there and you like this show, first I want to ask you, please give us a nice rating. It really does inspire us to keep going. But if you're here right now live, what I'd love to ask you to do is on enlightenedbusinessradio.com, just let us know if this is the kind of dialogue that you are resonating with. Meaning, let us know where you're at with this whole thing. It would be really fantastic to hear from you for a moment and see if what we're saying is in fact landing. So go ahead and share a comment with us around what's your dialogue with this particular conversation. And Jeffrey, what's your individual dialogue with this? What's up with you about this, my friend?
Oh, man. This has been like the dialogue. It seems like on some level my whole freaking life. But certainly it's very present this year. It's like, I think for people that are really sort of on the cutting edge of saying yes to life, this dialogue reoccurs regularly because we never stay static, right? And so, as you know, one of my big things lately has been like the last 13 years of my life living in San Francisco has come to a close. And I'm really being guided to move to LA. And I have a sense of some of the reasons for it. And the image I keep getting in my soul is like a bigger broadcast station. And you know, so I'm moving, and I'm moving in September. Woohoo! Woohoo! And, you know, I don't know where I'm going to be living yet. I'm just going to rent a place on Airbnb for a while and suss things out and just plant myself there and get my butt there. Yeah. So it's one of those big leaps of faith where I don't really know why exactly I'm being called there. I don't have, you know, if people are like, oh, is this for work? I say, yup.
What kind of work? Right. I don't know. Right.
Right. So you know, I can't say, oh, I'm being relocated there by my office.
So let me ask you this question, you know, because one of the things that you're great at is allowing yourself to move from your guidance. And right. I think that that's a challenging thing to do for people because, one, they don't know what guidance they're getting. You know, it's kind of like, oh, Jesus, there's something else I'm supposed to do, but what that thing is or what that means or whether I trust it is a big, like, what is that? So, you know, share a little bit about how that looks for you and how you're able to get the, like, oh, LA, got it, and yes, I'm going there even before I have any clue what that means. Yeah, cool. So first I'll say it comes with practice, I think, a bit. And that this isn't the first time I've had a calling like this. When I moved to San Francisco 13 years ago, it was just clear as day. I kind of woke up one day and realized, like, oh, I'm done in Minneapolis. And where I asked where to, it was like this big booming voice, San Francisco, right? And this time it was a little different. It's just been over the past year, I've gotten these started with a little inkling, like, I just kind of, I don't know why, but in the back of my brain, I kind of feel like I might be living in LA someday. That's weird, right? You started saying it, actually, too.
I know.
You told me.
Right. Well, and that's part of the practice, actually, is like, I don't keep it to myself. Because if I do, then I can get stuck in my own rut. And so part of the practice is like, here's what I'm getting, friends and family. Also, like, when you start doing that, you let the people in your life in on the direction that's starting to heat up.
Yeah, because I think that's a big thing. I think that usually when you're getting that inkling about something new or different, the natural tendency is just to, like, hold back, close it back, you know? But right. I think that all that does is it makes you more fearful of what that thing is because it just becomes a shadow, you know?
Well, and for me, like, what it does is, you know, there's grieving when you make change. There's always grieving.
Yeah.
And I have an amazing life in San Francisco. I have amazing friends. I live in a beautiful, like, the most beautiful neighborhood, the most beautiful street, I think, in the whole city. You know, it's tree lined, and we have these, like, Zen sitting areas with Buddhas and whatnot on our sidewalks. In the middle of this urban environment. So part of me saying it is also like broadcasting to my friends here, this is going to come to a close. So they can also like join me in the like closing of that loop.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the fear is that you don't know what it all means. And so, you know, like I know with family sometimes, like, you know, you're single at the moment, and I think a lot of times when you have family, the alternate fear of that is like, I'm going to say this thing, and it's going to create this big panic and this big sense of havoc that, like, you know, I can't do that, or it's going to disrupt the safety of our well-being or something like that, you know?
And then it feels like the repercussions of that are going to bulldoze me over, and I won't be able to deal. I don't have the capacity to to stand in the face of that.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it too, is like, can I learn that I can say these things not because they're substantiated or not, but because they're true. Yeah. And they're only true because I feel it in my soul.
Yeah. And I think that's, something that we stand behind so deeply in our lives, which is so challenging, is following truth as the guiding force above and beyond logic or programming or what should be rather than what is. And I think that takes a devoted practice of faith, of following what's true, which I think most, And
it's a muscle you build, right? Like, I've been on this journey for a while, and I one of my daily practices is I actually pray this thing I call the prayer of yes, which is I say to the universe, okay, prayer of yes. What have I just said yes to? And to me, it's an act of trust where I'm like, I'm going to say yes. Now, fill in the blank on what I just said yes to. Versus, well, tell me what I might have to say yes to, and then I'll debate whether or not I'm on board. Right? So to me, I have been building this muscle with a daily practice, learning to trust. And it is a muscle. And over time, you do learn, like, oh, when I follow truth, it's not always easy, but it always leads me to good stuff.
Yeah. And I think the key there is that you can't not, to a certain degree. I mean, you can, certainly. You can choose to just keep going down the path you've done. But one of my favorite questions for myself is, what's the cost of doing nothing? What really is the cost of doing nothing? And I think that so often in life, we always focus on the cost of doing something, right? Like, what does it cost to move? What does it cost to hire this coach? What does it cost to bring this thing on? Like, we are very programmed to think about things in regards to, here's what I give up in order to do this thing. But I think one of the things that I've been practicing is the cost of doing nothing. Like, what do I give up if I don't do this? What do I give up if nothing changes?
Yeah, that's a great practice. And, for everybody listening, I'd love to have you post here on the Enlightened Business Radio website with this Facebook plugin. Just add a comment. And I'm curious for you who are in this dialogue of, gosh, should I, shouldn't I have this calling, I don't know what to do. As Max said, it can be really easy to focus on the cost of doing something, of taking the action, but we all often don't look at what would it cost for me to stay where I'm at, to not pay attention to it, to not do anything. So for everybody listening, I'd love to hear from you what you notice about what it costs you to not take action, and would love to see you just add a comment on that.
Yeah.
Max,
we're still finding this dialogue between how do we look at what they're doing and then pay attention to each other. So thank you for being patient with us. And
Great. So I would love to hear what's showing up for you around this bigger calling.
Well, the first thing, I don't know if I've told you this yet, now that I'm broadcasting into the world, we put an offer on a house, and it got accepted. And part of that was this real call of creating a space that we could really create from. I've been renting, and it's a beautiful home here in Ojai, but dealing with, not landlords, what do they call them, the property managers? She was a great practice for me of not wanting to murder someone, or if that's probably more the downside of the practice of just staying really compassionate to somebody who's clearly not very happy, but also not having a workshop space like on property to lead and facilitate groups on. And we do a pretty good job of finding places to film, but we actually haven't had a film set. We've been like setting up shots in our home in different spots, and it's just been this real call of like, I need a space to create from. And I need to find some place where we can actually create. It's interesting. Our theme is homes, and I've kind of been loosely following it because it's a big deal to buy a home and I'm putting a huge down payment down and just the whole process. And finally, last week, actually, we were just like, nope. We can't like ignore this any longer. We have to go. And literally the next day we found a home. And it was that like, it was just that real like, yes, this is what's happening, that all of a sudden like, whew, it just locked in, like literally like that, locked into place.
So here's what I'm curious about. What was the reluctance before you made the decision like, yep, we've got to go and we've got to go now?
I think part of it's financial. I'm always dancing with my own scarcity mindset stuff, which some people might sound surprising, but like I always have this like back in my mind saying like, you can't do that, you don't have the funds for that, you don't whatever. Even when it's not true, even when there's clearly a way to make it happen. So I think part of it was that, just like, am I really going to put down this much money for a home? That was one part of it, just the financial piece. And part of it was that sense of I can't have what I want, which, is always that thing that I think all of us have, but I've been very aware of lately of like, this place to really anchor down and create something great is not something I can have. I think those were probably the two. Like,
so I just want to comment on the latter one first, because that, like, that's been a theme that I've certainly dealt with and material I've worked with personally, of like, I can't have what I most want. I can have stuff I want, sure, but what I most desire, my heart's desire. And I can sort of trace it back to, early childhood stuff of like, it hurts too much to keep wanting it and not get it.
Hey, what is it that you most desire? I'm curious as you were saying that. What is that? Tell me that. I'd like to know that.
I think the most prevalent thing for me is just to be in a relationship and love. And I don't say it from a pining for it place at this point in my life. I don't have a lot of like, oh crap, blah, 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 blah. But rather it's like the conversation is like, how much goodness can I allow myself to receive? How much can I give to myself what I really want?
So what answer do you get when you ask that question? What how does that translate into your experience?
Well, actually, LA is part of that.
See,
LA is part of that.
That's the thing that's so interesting about these, is I find it's kind of like it always leads back to where you you think you need to go.
Like, here's a little example of it. Is a couple trips ago, earlier this year, on a trip in LA, I was driving around in my old car, and it wasn't a car I loved. And I just like got a very clear like, oh no, it's time to go get a car you really love. And I love cars. I grew up in Michigan. What can I say? And so it was like, it wasn't an act. It was an act of like giving myself something I really love, and it's like a small little act compared to some more deeply emotional stuff. But the LA thing is like, I know that the life I'm stepping into is anchored there, and I'm saying yes to it. And it actually, to the part of me that says I can't have what I most want, it feels a little scary. It feels like, oh wow, you're really pressing some boundaries here. So, you know.
Well, and so to loop back around, how do you, well, yeah, actually, probably a good time to introduce the Jeffery head bob, because you have a very visual representative of how you get guidance. So for those of you watching this on video, which you can find on the Big Vision Show YouTube channel, you'll see that from time to time, Jeffery looks like he gets struck by lightning. Do you want to?
That's what my friends call spiritual Tourette's.
Right. Why don't? Why don't you explain to people what's happening when you get your spiritual Tourette's? That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and people often think like it hurts. They're like, "Is your neck okay?" So in that little soft spot in the back of my skull, which some people in spiritual circles call the mouth of God, back in my 20s when I was essentially initiated by my spiritual teacher, it was that point that all this energy came streaming in through. Ever since then, whenever I get spiritual guidance, like little hits or little knowings or downloads or visions or whatever, it's like energetically it comes through that point and my head goes and flips to the right or to the left. And when it's really an intense, like, yes, that's it, pay attention to it, oftentimes my like energetic thing is stronger and my head kind of almost looks like it's going to do a 360 on the top of my head and I'm going to turn into a horror movie here. But yeah, so you know, and for me it's very entertaining. Yeah, but it's also like it's very clear, like when I get stuff it's like boom, there it is. Yeah. Yep. So
for those of us that don't get struck by spiritual Tourette's lightning syndrome, how do you suggest? What's your guidance on gaining this level of clarity?
Okay. So when I start talking about that, you'd be surprised how many people come up to me and they're like, I noticed your head thing. And they're like, I get goosebumps on my arms when I get knowing, or the hair on the back of my neck stands up, or I feel warmth in my chest. Or I met this one woman who's like, I kind of get burps. She's like, burps.
That one's not nearly as attractive to be around.
Right. So a lot of people get little physical sensations around spiritual downloads, if you will, but dismiss them. Yeah. And I think so for a lot of people, just start to pay attention to it and you'll notice like, oh, actually, I do get this physical sensation in this way. And, you know, for a lot of people, it's not going to be quite as overt or obvious as mine is visibly in the world, but it's there. And, you know, and not for everybody. So you've just got to find like, what is my own feedback mechanism from the universe? Imagine, here's the information I'm getting right now, that we're always in a dialogue with the whole. We're always in a dialogue with the universe. And a dialogue is two-way. And we're used to living our lives one way, right? Even if you think about traditional religion and traditional prayer, it's one way. You send a prayer out to God or whatever. But it's not a dialogue. It's not like, oh, and then you get an answer and blah, 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 except for maybe like a sign 2 days later. No, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like real-time dialogue. Like you can ask a question and then get a response. And so part of that is also being quiet enough at first to hear it and discern that it's actually the response in this two-way dialogue with the universe.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I don't get instant feedback if I'm just moving around in life. Right. I get it when I sit down to meditate. I get quiet. I
Right.
have a really clear channel and I get really clear information. But I don't have it the same way you do. So I'm going to practice that this week. I'm going to have a practice of just like, I like that, two-way communication because it makes total sense to me, but it's not my direct experience. And I think that's just what requires some attention then to make it a direct experience.
Well, and I think it starts with what you described. I think it starts with getting quiet, with being in meditation, with getting still enough to receive responses to your deeper questions. And then as you move throughout your day, start practicing it. Start notice a question that's in your mind, and you're going through life and it's in your mind, and then just get still in that moment and just go is there a response here? Mm-hmm. So what is it, right? And sometimes there won't be anything, but sometimes there will.
Yeah.
So,
if we loop all this back around to the theme for our day, which is, that place of feeling like there's something greater that I'm meant to do, but I don't know what it is. I would challenge that, I don't know what it is piece.
So would I.
I think that if, I was thinking about, I'm about to go off to do my own kind of personal growth seminar. It's called the Hoffman process. You're aware of it, and I'm leaving next week. And they do these kind of check-in calls, And she called me, and I don't know if you know this either, but I have almost zero memory from when I was a child.
Me too.
Like when I say zero memory, before I was 13, I have almost no memory.
Oh my gosh, it's so weird.
You don't have it either.
Mine starts at about 12.
Well, so this process, that's weird.
It's really weird.
This process is all about going back into childhood, about when you were growing up. And she's asking, they're asking these questions, and I said, I'm being really sincere. I just don't have any recollection of it. And she said to me, so you must have a habit of checking out then. And I was like, huh? Yeah, check, what? And, as we always talk about around this sort of truth of there's something so powerful about somebody else just confronting this place in you that says, I don't know. And so I think we're right here, right now, confronting this I don't know place in you. Or I don't know if it's right, or I don't know if it's what I should be doing. I bet you do know. I'll bet that if you're listening to this right now, you do know. You just are not confronting the scared part of you clearly enough.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine I was talking to the other day who was asking me for advice on something, whatever. And I just looked at him and I was like, dude, you so don't need my advice. The last thing you need right now is my advice. You know. You absolutely know. Right? You're just pretending that you don't.
Right.
And it's the analogy I got was you're taking a placebo pill, you realize it's a placebo pill, and you're pretending that you don't realize it. But you do. Which means, of course, the placebo doesn't work. Right? And he was like, oh crap, you nailed me. Right? And I think for a lot of people, especially at this day and age, man, I think that guidance is coming more fast and furious and clearly than ever before. And people do know, but it's just so here's what I'm getting. The bigger picture here is that we're creating a new world. And we don't know what this new world is as we're creating it. It's like building a plane as you're flying it. And so you're getting this guidance, you know it's true, you don't know exactly what it's going to look like because it hasn't been built before and hasn't ever existed before. And you just are going to choose whether or not you say yes and go okay, I'll build that or not.
I always, for some reason, I have a weird visceral reaction to when people say we're creating this new world. I don't know why. I think it's just old programming around language, but the way I would say it a little differently that doesn't trigger me which doesn't make it right or wrong, I guess, but is just that, like, I think people are less and less willing to settle for their own mediocrity anymore. And what that requires is each person to be willing to kind of step up and start looking at what's really the way they want to live and what's really the way they want to contribute. Like, actually, this would be an interesting dialogue. Why don't you share the little conversation that we had this week about us?
Oh, that. Yeah, well, it started with conversation around speakers for Enlightened Business Live this fall. And, you know, we've been in this dialogue, since early this spring around who we want to invite and who we want to have there. And the conversation started with more big names, people we all know.
Strategic.
Strategic, exactly.
That's really
like,
what...
Oh, those people will fill the seats.
Yeah, we know those people like those people.
Right, yeah. And they're kind of like...
Been there, done that.
You know, been there, done that. Everybody's seen them. There's lots of places to go hear their message. And then we started... You brought up Charles, who wrote Sacred Economics.
Cool guy. Everybody should look him up on YouTube. Charles Enstein. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Essenstein. Sacred Economics. Look up Charles Sacred Economics on YouTube.
Eisenstein.
Oh, it's the Dutch in you knows how to say that very clearly. Eisenstein.
Anyway, you know, and like he's a cutting edge thinker. He's really like, so here's two ways I would talk about what you, we'll get to this, but like your thing about being triggered about like we're creating a new world, and you're saying, well, I feel like people are just not able to settle for mediocrity in themselves anymore. I actually think it's part of the same conversation.
Totally. It is the same conversation. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so we're waking up, another way to say this is we're waking up to like a deeper truth or a truer truth. And then looking at what is in front of us and going like, this doesn't match. This old thing doesn't look like the truth that I feel.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of like reorienting to this deeper truth collectively. But as we do that, of course, something new is going to emerge, and that's what I'll call a new world.
Well, and you know, like the thing about it is, like, let's just take the Charles thing, for example. Like, the dialogue with me and you and the team and me and the team and me and Charles is like, we're trying to make it like nice and neat. And it's, you know, like it's trying to be like, oh, we know if this happens, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And that's kind of how we all want, and we think we want to live our lives, except for that just keeps us in the same stupid routine ever. And once you start breaking out, it's like, wow, well, would Charles fit? I have no idea. Would he say something? You know, a lot of the stuff we even talked about, this is stuff that we don't agree with. But does that mean we shouldn't bring him in?
Right.
You know? Like, do we want to control what the flow of energy is, or do we want to let something new emerge? And that's the place where you, like, lean into it, you know?
Right. And here's the thing I think about that from a business standpoint is... The old way of thinking is, well, let's bring in the tried and true people who we know we agree with and will bolster us up so that people will want to work with us. Right? Really straightforward, strategic, and that's traditionally how things are done.
And it works a lot of the time.
Or at least has.
Yeah, at least it has.
And I think another way to approach this, which I think is where we're heading, is going like, what's the dialogue we want to be in with people, right? What's the dialogue we want to be in? Not just with the speakers, but with the people we're going to work with. Who do we want to attract to us? Which kind of people and which kinds of dialogue? And so when we look at it from that standpoint, it's really like, we're really being called to work with people who don't want to just do the tried and true, who are more cutting edge, who are waking up to this deeper truth and translating it through their life and through their business. And yeah, it will challenge the way business has been done. So great that we bring in somebody that challenges how business is done. Not necessarily that we're going to agree with it, but it's part of that dialogue.
Yeah.
You know?
I just think it's so tricky because it's like we have this inherent desire simultaneously to do something radically different and to be comfortable. You know what I'm saying? It's like we want things to be predictable, but there's definitely been a period of the last year where like stuff got too predictable for me. And I just, like I was telling somebody the other day, and you know, it's interesting because I used to think, quite frankly, that we could just skip the dialogue of achievement and go to what's most true. What I mean by that is like, you know, in order to like really shake things up, I think there's a part of you that has to like achieve some stable success first.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, like you kind of have to like, all right, I've done that.
It's like when you're learning to be an artist, you need to learn the basic craft before you step into the art.
But I think it's even more than that. I think it's like, well, actually, you know what it is? It's money. Like, I think you have to like just be strategic and make money, and however much that is, first to realize that it's not what you want. You know, like in business particularly, like so many people, that what they want is just somebody to tell them here's what to do, because they want to just like get stable.
Paint by numbers.
Right. And then you get stable, which is fine. But my experience, I don't. Maybe this is a question. Is this your experience? My experience is you get stable and then you get really bored almost simultaneously.
Yeah.
You know. But I'm realizing this is a good question. Can you jump the stable bored experience to get to what people most want, or do you have to have the stable bored experience?
Wow.
I think you have to actually. I mean, I guess as I've been contemplating on it, I think you have to have that first. Like you have to like do it, check it off. Like, oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Which is the quandary, you know. Like then that's the dilemma then that everybody's in. Like I really want to do something totally wild and different.
Well, okay. So here's what I'm getting about that. So it's kind of like a yes and. Like I agree with you to a certain point. And I think how people try to do that is by doing it the way everyone tells them they should, and being, you know, just do this, then do that, and press this lever and pull that, and then it will come out the other side this way.
Right.
And I think for people that are like selling transformational work, if there's also not at least some level of challenging yourself, there's no fire in it, there's no passion, nothing's compelling, and that doesn't work either. So, but sometimes what can be like fiery is you challenging yourself to like build the business and do it, right? But then after you kind of have that in place, that board place that you get to, the next fiery thing is like, all right, now let's shake it up.
Yeah. And you know what's so like funny is you can never ever know until you go do it. You know, it's like so here's one of the the things that was funny. So we put this offer on the house, and then, you know, almost immediately it was like, oh shit, what if we get it? You know?
We did talk once you put the offer in, and I remember you being in that place.
I was like, I don't know what to think about all this. And inherently, in that moment, there's that kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where this is going. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. Like, you know, people call it buyer's remorse. I think in so many ways with the stuff we're called to do these days, it's much more than that. It's like spiritual confrontation of like, how committed are you to this whole thing? And the place I came to is like, I don't know. But it feels like the right step, and I won't know unless I do it. And what's the cost? The cost is me continuing to deal with this terrible landlord. The cost is me not having a space to create in. The cost is me not feeling like I have a home. You know, poor Amanda is like chomping at the bit to utilize her gifts in terms of design. It's like the costs were much greater than what I could anticipate as the potential challenges of moving through it. And it was something like new. It was just like, let's go here, you know?
Well, and I think what's going on, and this is a big part of this, like I'm called to do something new and I don't know if I can answer it, is we're so used to functioning based on what we can see.
Yeah.
In other words, what do we know about? What can we point to, right? And in this time in history when we're feeling stuff bubble up, but it's not manifest yet. We can't point to it. We can't touch it yet. But we feel the truth of it. It's like learning to live from a different feedback mechanism.
Well, and the other side of that is, what can you tell me about what's true? You know? Like, I don't know what's true, so what can you tell me about what's true? And that's why, you know, so much of the time we have this society of like, of course we want paint by numbers, because I am not willing to challenge my own thoughts and take some time to look at my own way of being to determine what's true for me, you know?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna go there a minute. When we're kids, we get the here's my truth mechanism shut down, kicked out, right? It's like, we're like, no, you can't, don't, stop, you know, blah, blah, blah. And all our natural desire gets curtailed and put in little boxes. And part of adulthood is actually reclaiming that in a powerful adult way, right? Where we stop saying all of those other people have the answer and I need to go get it from them, which is almost like getting permission from mom and dad.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
And I think
saying like, no, I'm going to claim what I know is true, not because I have any justification for it.
And I think a lot of it, you know, I was thinking about this too, comes from what are the right questions to ask yourself. I've been in this real place of inquiry around a lot of things lately, you know, like this Hoffman process is stirring up all sorts of stuff, and stuff that I don't even know. Like, I know is being stirred up, but I can't see it because I don't have any memory of it. And I was, you know, I've just been asking myself these interesting questions, like, what does it mean to be my own person? Like, that's a question I've actually been sitting with. Like, what does it mean for me to be my own person? Like, does it mean I can make the choice to buy this home? Does it mean I can make the choice to be happy in my relationship? Does it mean that I can not worry about money the way my parents did? Like, what does it mean for me to be my own person? Do you have questions that you percolate on, or is that something that's not as much a part of your practice?
I feel like questions come to me.
That's
to
nice.
Percolate on.
Well, there you go again, just things shooting through your head. Must be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, one of the questions that's been percolating for me is, and it feels almost embarrassing to say it, but it's how much glory can you accept?
What does that mean? How much glory can you accept? I mean, I'll sit with that too.
And it's a weird word. It's not a standard word.
Yeah, I think that's what's thrown my mind. Like, I don't know what glory means, which is probably a good reason to percolate on it.
And so part of, I think, some of the language that comes through me is because of my religious upbringing. So, there's connotations with it that I carry. But the glory is like goodness, bigness, receiving for no other reason than I exist. And I'm really in this shift from proving myself, which comes from the conversation of if I do enough, then I deserve. If I do enough, then then I've proven XYZ, and then I can receive.
Yeah.
And this conversation is the challenge of like, no proving, no even doing to prove. This is like, how much can you just be and like experience the fullness of God, the fullness of the divine, and all the gifts of that energy. Like, this is maybe weird to say. I don't know. It's not weird. I've been feeling like I'm carrying the amount of energy I'm channeling, the amount of energy my even physical being is able to allow in. That's like being blown up. And that's part of that like glory. It's almost like the glory of the divine, where it challenges the ego separation between you and the divine, you and the universe. So that to me is what that question is.
Yeah, I'll sit with what that means to me. I have zero relationship with that word glory. Like, I can, when you said it at first, I was like, the glory of winning the NHL. Like, I was thinking of it like the glory of sports accomplishment,
Yes.
Right, which is probably a different glory than you're inviting in.
Glory.
Yeah, but these are good questions.
And like, I think language is important that way. And different words will unlock stuff inside of each one of us. So that's a word that challenges me, because it's not just like, oh, how much of the expression of the divine can I inhabit or whatever, but glory to me is like, woo, that's a hot one. That really challenges me in particular, because of my own upbringing of like praising something outside of me.
Yeah.
There's me and there's it, and that's like saying, no, let's collapse those two things.
Yeah, it's so interesting, I mean, there's a part of me that wonders why or how people can function without vacillating between their inner exploration and their outer strategy. Like, I'm just reflecting for a moment on this show, and like, it's like every other sentence has been like, here's what is percolating inside, here's what we're doing about it in the world, here's what we're like, I just don't even understand how I guess people just do it,
They just do it.
They just do it, and they don't.
I had this little insight the other day of like, almost like unconsciously we all have different roles, and some of us are here to really push the envelope of what it means to be human, what it means to be in business, really challenging the structure of society, etc. And then there's this whole other group of people that are here to anchor what is. And if we only had the first group, it would like flip on its head and get all like, it wouldn't. You need the anchor and the challenge, because otherwise it would all just fall apart. And so I feel like unconsciously, even maybe there's people here that are really meant to like anchor what is, so that others of us can like push forward into what wants to be.
Others of us can go into La La Land sometimes. Disconnect from all sense of reality. Yeah.
Sometimes we need to do that, and then we plug back in.
Yeah. Well, if you can believe it, we're almost at the top of the hour again. So I think it's, as we move into these last few minutes, maybe some closing thoughts and some final things. Now, I'll say that this show inherently is designed to be fueled by you listening. And so, one, if you really enjoyed it and you found a lot of value in being here with us, our deepest hope is that you share it. Share it on Facebook, share it on Twitters, invite your friends to listen into it. It would be very kind if you're receiving value from us to just go ahead and share it. And the second thing is that we are now on iTunes, and we're publishing this onto the iTunes stratosphere. And so if you got it or found it on iTunes, either of the two, we would be so grateful if you could go and just share a comment and a positive rating there. It helps us very much and motivates us to keep doing these things. And again, you can either go to enlightenedbusinessradio.com, and once you enter your name and email, we'll send you to iTunes through that page once you get access, or you can just go directly to iTunes and find it out.
Yeah. Also, you can subscribe to the podcast.
Right.
So you can take it along with you and keep up to date that way. I'll also quickly add, as Max and I have been in this dialogue around these speakers and what energy we want to have October 2 through 5 at Enlightened Business Live, it's going to be amazing.
Off the charts.
I mean, we've always felt it, but wow, now I'm really feeling the fire of it. And the theme that really appeared to us at a team retreat was activating your contribution. And part of that activation is really piercing through, quote unquote, what is, so that something new can emerge. And the people that are going to be there and the speakers that are going to be there are all there to really pierce through that veil of what we think is, what we think our lives are and businesses and how it should be done, so that the way you're designed to do it can appear. And so you can learn more about that and join us at enlightenedbusinesslive.com.
Yeah, join us for that. We'll have likely 400 to 500 people there with us, and it will be an experience of real profound transformational breakthroughs in regards to allowing you to focus exclusively on what you most desire. Giving you the permission and the tools and the support and the strategy to focus all of your life's energy on what's most important to you, which unfortunately is not what most people get to do these days. Most people are focusing a little bit of their energy on what's most important to them, and the vast majority of their time and energy on maintaining or just trying to survive, and that's no way to live. That's no way to live. So we do hope you join us there.
Yeah. So final comments, Max.
I think if we look at the theme of today, which is the calling to do something new and the desire, first I would say, we can't trick ourselves into asking questions that are not the real questions. Mm-hmm. Like
what?
Like, is this the most viable market? Actually, you know what it is? It's starting with the how-to conversations.
That's it.
It's
Yes.
if you're starting with how-to, you're asking yourself the wrong question. How do I do this?
You're dead in the water from the get-go.
Right. You're too much in the tactical from the start. And I think that what you have to be willing to do is ask the deeper questions about what is it that I'm really feeling called to move forward in right now? What is that thing that I actually, if I was being really honest with myself, can't ignore? Right? Mm-hmm. That's the question. What is it, if I'm being honest with myself, is something I'm no longer able to ignore?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are my thoughts, is being willing to ask those questions and honor what that means. What about you?
Awesome. One of the things that we didn't touch on so much in this episode, but I want to touch on in this final piece, is first asking yourself that question, but then asking yourself, and which parts of me have been scared to acknowledge that truth? Because what I find is that when...
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah, like when people underneath sort of like, deeper down know, ooh, there's something there, but I'm ignoring it. Part of the reason they're ignoring it is because they're scared, and largely because there's something they don't trust in themselves about being able to handle it. that it's going to be bigger than them, or that it's going to bulldoze their life over on some level. And that needs to be addressed. So the second thing I would say is, like, once I acknowledge, what have I been ignoring that I can no longer ignore? What truth have I been ignoring? The second thing I'd ask is, like, and what parts of me are freaked out that it's going to bulldoze my life? What are my biggest fears about what could happen? And then,
and what? When I asked that question about the house this week, I remember saying it. I remember saying it to Amanda, like, I'm overwhelmed about this whole house thing. And the moment I actually put a voice to it, it went away.
Yeah.
Like the moment I was honest with that question, it did. It just went away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have clients where it's like they ask that question, they're like, oh, I'm scared it's going to screw up my relationship. Right. Or I'm scared about this, or I'm scared about that. And then what there is to do is like, oh, okay, so maybe what you need to do is just go talk with your spouse honestly and share what's going on with you before you take action on it. And they're like, oh, yes, that's what I need to do. Right. And there's this relief. And it's like, oh, here's the thing I need to manage or take care of. And then I can say yes to this thing. Wow, cool. Right? And there's always this sense underneath it that it's going to overtake my life, that this big call is going to bulldoze my life. But if you look at what the actual fears are, you can actually manage them.
Yeah,
which means you can then say yes.
That's all it is. It's about managing the things that are showing up and still going, though. Managing them and still going. So that's what you got to do.
Done. Yeah. And you know what's cool about that is over time, it builds not just trust in the universe or trust in the calling or trust in whatever you call that voice, but it builds trust in yourself. Oh, I can be in relationship with this calling. I can honor the life I have, and I can honor the stuff that comes up and that needs to be honestly addressed, and I can address it, which means like I have capacity. And when you feel like you have capacity, that's when you feel like, oh, I can say yes. I trust myself. It feels okay.
Right. That's so good. That's great. Well, what a great show. Thanks, Mr. Van Dyke, for being here. I, as always, am very grateful for your presence in my and all of our lives. Your psychic head bob inspires me.
Well, your willingness to have fun in the pursuit of truth inspires me, so thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, we hope you loved this show. The replay will be on bigvisionbusiness.com, will be on iTunes, and please share it with your friends. And then once you've done all that, go join us at enlightenedbusinesslive.com. It will be it'll be the most remarkable live event that we think we've ever produced for you, and a real breakthrough moment in regards to you focusing your life energy on what is most significant and important and meaningful to you.
Your soul's greatest desire.
Yeah. All right.
Over and out.
Great show,
Thanks,
my
all.
friend. See you soon. Much
all right,
love.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe.